primero que nada, muito obrigado a Alessandro pela invitação, a Anita Mar. Estou muito contente de estar com tantos amigos aqui. Eu penso que vou falar em inglês, mas veremos como vai a coisa. So, the title of my presentation is this: Transitional Legitimacy from Factual Constraints to Ideal Aspirations. I want to start with a conceptual point, which is very easy, but some can define it, which is that there is a difference between legitimacy and justice. Mainly, the contrast that I want to say is that some decision or some procedure could be legitimate, but could not be just. And the same happens, in the other way. Something can be just, but it cannot be legitimate. So there is not like an internal or necessary connection between legitimacy and justice. The idea is that both are a normative criteria of evaluation, but they evaluate different kind of things. Legitimacy tries to link a procedure with a substantive value, while justice is context independent. This means that if something is just, that is independent of what the people believe about it, or about the context on where that is happening. But legitimacy is inherently linked to a public reasoning and to a public form of justification between different kinds of citizens. What I want to do here is to think about this kind of beliefs that we can find in the public sphere, which are pretty difficult. These are, for example, men should have less days of paid leave for having children, poor individuals are imprudent and should be responsible for the cost of their decisions, and homosexual couples should have the right to civil union, but not the right to marry. So I think that if we think, for example, in Habermas or in deliberative democracy conceptions of legitimacy, they all have a problem with this kind of beliefs that, to me, they are what I'm going to call dependent on inequality. There are different kinds of beliefs. I will try to make some distinctions now, but I think that deliberative democracy and conceptions of legitimacy have a specific problem with this kind of beliefs. The main problem is, must they be included in the public sphere? In which way? Must they be completely excluded as reasons to justify some political decisions? Or do we have to make some kind of commitment with the result of this? The main problem would be that if we are going to see the problem, but what I want to try to argue in favor today is that what we need is a conception of legitimacy which explains how it's possible to go from a status quo in which these kind of beliefs are possible and happen actually, to a more egalitarian a more egalitarian context of justification. That is why we need a transitional conception of legitimacy. That's my main problem today. So first, I would like to say something more about these kind of beliefs, or what I think they are and why they are problematic. Of course, I assume that you will know why they are problematic, but they place a specific challenge. We can build this kind of continuum in different beliefs. We have reasonable beliefs, we have inequality-dependent beliefs, and we have unreasonable beliefs. For example, an unreasonable belief, to me, would be something like that there is a natural place or a natural role for the woman to occupy in a social life. Or that, for example, homosexuals should not adopt children. that would be an unreasonable belief. Why? Because it's blind to evidence. Even if you present some evidence contrary to that belief, the belief is going to persist, and because it rejects completely cooperation. What distinguishes these unreasonable beliefs from these inequality-dependent beliefs is that it's not completely bound to evidence, but it places always the burden of the proof on the less advantages. This is clear for me. I work a long time. I'm working in social protection, and this is clear the case in social protection and conditional cash transfer. They do not deny completely cooperation, but say that the poor, for example, have to prove that they are responsible in order to receive some benefit or some transfer. Could you hear me without the microphone? Can you hear me without the microphone? No. See?
It's for the recording.
Oh, okay, okay, so.
Más bajo, más fácil.
Más bajo. Porque estou fazendo muita força. Okay, thanks. So, the idea of inequality-dependent belief is that it's established some cooperation, but it's always a different cooperation. It's always an unequal cooperation. It's a conditional cooperation in which the most privileged or most advantaged members of the society can define which are the terms of cooperation. So we have, of course, reasonable beliefs, and we will have no problem with this. So the thing is, if we include this inequality-dependent belief in a conception of legitimacy, of course, the conception of legitimacy loses its normative force, loses completely its normative force, for different reasons that we are going to see. But if we exclude it, we have another kind of problem, which is not normative, but which is that loses justification, real justification, to flesh and bones citizens. For example, this is clear in the case of conditional cash transfers. Conditionalities are justified. One of the reasons why conditionalities are justified is because people think that they have to, non-beneficiaries in general, think that this benefit should be conditional. And this is like a sufficient reason to include that conditions into this kind of policy. So we have like a kind of dilemma here between our normative aspirations and the restraints of activity. So, why this is a problem for conceptions of legitimacy? We can build two extremes of conception of legitimacy. For example, one which is populist legitimacy and which does not have anything to do with what we call populism, that would say something like this. That error comes as a public justifier if citizens find it acceptable on the light of their available set of evidence, regardless of how that set of evidence is correct, full of bias, or full of prejudice. Of course, this is like revealed beliefs, and they have a lot of problems, but one of the advantages is that they will produce stability and ensure minimal compliance with this kind of policies that are based on these reasons or beliefs. So this would be, if you want, like a realist kind of conception of legitimacy. And we have like the most typical conception of legitimacy between philosophers, which is the idealizing legitimacy. This is typically the case of Rawls. What does Rawls with this kind of beliefs? He basically says, well, okay, these could be the beliefs that people have, these are the beliefs that people have, but actually, when we are trying to make a public justification, we should only take into account the reasons that reasonable persons could accept in reasonable circumstances. So the idea, and this is, to me, we can argue about this is similar in the case of Habermas. The idea is that we modulate, counterfactually the citizens and the justificatory processes in order to exclude this kind of beliefs. So a political decision in this case is justified if it is based on reasons that citizens similarly situated and motivated could accept. So what, for example, Bowman and Richardson said about this idea of using legitimacy as reasons, as synonym of reasons that all could accept this idea of counterfactual, is that there is a strong disassociation between reasonings of real citizens from any criteria of reasonability. So, to me, this, of course, I'm doing like an extreme version of conceptions of legitimacy, but I think that there is some point behind here, is that it has two main problems. One is that, for example, a populist conception of legitimacy would tell that the reasons that people really have are important to include, because if you do not include, they're going to damage more to the disadvantage. So, in a sense, reinforces status quo. And the idealizing conceptions of legitimacy would travel in some kind of utopian dream about these counterfactual situations and these counterfactual citizens without linking with what actual citizens and actual reasons have. And mainly what it's important for me is that both of these conceptions imply an static vision of beliefs and reasons. There is the idea that the reasons that all citizens could accept are defined in some way previously, and they are not modified. There is no important place for the change of beliefs there. And of course, this happens in the case of the populist conceptions. So the idea is that neither of these conceptions of legitimacy would offer any guide to make a transition from these inequality-dependent beliefs to more egalitarian beliefs. So this is like a very stupid analogy that I would like to do because I love this movie. I do not know if you see, but it's like you are going to your preferred spot of holiday, and suddenly your car breaks down. So you are like in a big hurry, you do not have connection to call anyone, and you are in the middle of the desert. So someone passes with the car, and it says, well, I'm going to help you, I'm going to take you to the closest town. The closest town is a little farther away from your preferred spot of vacation, but I'm going to charge you, I don't know, $1,000. And that $1,000 is all the money that you have to go to your preferred vacation. So this Good Samaritan, in some way, puts you in a real problem, because what are you going to do? You are paying that, or you are going back to your car to think counterfactually, what would a Good Samaritan do in that place? What would be your day if you have chosen another spot of vacation, or if that desert would be like the sea? What are you going to do? I think that both conceptions of legitimacy, this populist idea of legitimacy and this idealizing conception of legitimacy, puts in a similar situation. We do not know how to make the transition from these unequal contexts, which are full with these inequality-dependent beliefs, to a more egalitarian context, justified. I don't want to say justification. A este contexto justificatorio. So this is a problem. Now it comes the wonderful solution that I'm going to draw. Of course, this is, and I think that it's important to make this transition to think in some ideas thrown by Rainer Forst regarding the dominant justification. As you all know, probably better than me, a dominant justification is when one agent of justification can project reasons into less advantageous agents of justification. One of these problems is that there is, the problems in this dominant justification is that there is an unequal burden for contesting decisions. And of course, it's an unequal threat to exit cooperation. Less advantaged people usually do not have too much other options to cooperate, so they have to get whatever, anything that they can get. But the most powerful members of society, the most advantaged, have different kind of options. So there is this unequal threat of cooperation. So the idea of a dominant justification could explain, in some sense, why these inequality-dependent beliefs are stable and are present in our societies. And I would like to add something else. Okay. I would like to add something else, which is taken from social psychology, which is the idea of the system, the theory of system justification. And this idea tries to explain why individuals are motivated to justify unequal systems, even if they are individually harmed by that unequal system. This is the idea that, for example, why women accept their role in a patriarchal society, or why the slave tries to justify the relation with his slaveholder. This kind of idea. And what is interesting about this rationalization of unequal status quo is that it makes that these kind of rationalizations are not completely irrational, because what this theory says is that individuals and groups do this basically to reduce the stress that produce, and one of the consequences is that to reduce the feelings of moral indignation and frustration. So the idea is that this kind of two dimensions, the Forstian dimension of dominant justification plus the idea of rationalization of unequal status quo, that can explain in some part why these kind of inequality-dependent beliefs are stable and are present in our societies. So the problem to me is this: it's really possible to change the beliefs and to change the set of reasons that feed the public justification, especially when we have in mind this kind of rationalization, because the idea would be, well, if we change the status quo, if we make the revolution, the set of beliefs and reasons that people accept would increasingly change very fast. That's what Joss, for example, and this system theory of justification says. That the idea that individuals have a desire or have a need to justify every status quo that they have. So how can we create different contexts of justification who can be apt for this change of beliefs? So, taking all this into account, the problem would be this: how to pass through a justificatory process from these inequality-dependent beliefs that actually help by citizens to beliefs that they could have in egalitarian contexts. So my idea is to take what Adam Swift, called an strategic attitude towards these inequality-dependent beliefs. And maybe it's one of the things that Alessandro attempted to do yesterday. The idea is that these inequality-dependent beliefs are not legitimate per se, but we have to take it into account as factual constraints of the set of public justifiers. If we do not take into account these kind of beliefs, probably we're going to end in an unrealistically utopian kind of public justification. There is a public justification that is not directed to individuals, to flesh and bone individuals, to real individuals living in egalitarian context. And what we want is to change that inegalitarian context. So how can we change that inegalitarian context through this? So the conception of transitional legitimacy that I'm trying to pursue, and this is a work in progress, so I don't have like this big solution, so I lie to you, is this. At least it should have two desideratums. The first is that in order to be legitimate, some justification must show a progressive distance from a status quo. This is like the first desideratum. It's like a more than minimal distance from a status quo. And the second is that it should be realistically to think that it would create context of justification with potential to change beliefs and reasons. So how could this be possible? How these two desideratums could be possible? Well, of course, we have like and this is not new, but we have the Forstian idea that one of the mechanisms that allow you to change beliefs and to change justifications is to create institutional mechanisms to contest and challenge political decisions. Of course, we all agree with that, and I think that we should make our conception of public sphere more inclusive, for example, to include public demonstrations, to include some kind of riots, to include other types of demonstration beyond what judges say or what citizens say in the public arena, etc., etc. But in the case of extreme poverty and in the case of the least advantaged members of society, and because of this thesis about the system of the justification of system, it is unlikely that this contestation and challenging of political decisions could happen really. This is like something problematic to me. But what I think that it would be more promising, maybe more difficult, but more promising, is to build some kind of not public spaces, but spaces, social spaces, not just political spaces, but social spaces, which can create shared experience between citizens from different groups, and from that shared experience, they can create egalitarian relations. I think that in the end, if we do not have like an egalitarian ethos, it's very difficult to have a real change in the system of beliefs and what counts as a public justifier or do not count as public justifiers. So my idea would be that to more shared field of experiences, stereotypes and prejudices reduce, and the processes of contrastation and formation of beliefs is enriched by more and better information. I'm going maybe too fast, but we can go to more in the questions. So just to make things clear, my criteria of transitional legitimacy would be something like that the political decision is T or transitional legitimate if and only if it is based on reasons that allow reasonable expectation for taking more than minimal distance from the status quo, and B, they allow the creation of justificatory context where change of beliefs is probable. So I take for in one side the diachronical and the diachronical aspect of politics, which to me is something very interesting, and which both or neither the populist conception of legitimacy and neither the idealizing conception of legitimacy takes into account. And I am trying to make an additional restriction to what counts as a valid justifier. It would be not sufficient to say that this is what individuals could accept in some more egalitarian or some counterfactual model where every agent is symmetrically situated. But you have to show that there is a reasonable distance from status quo. If you're not showing this, if you're not showing neither A, neither B, that the political decision would be illegitimate in some way. So this is my solution, and thanks to all for hearing, and I hope your questions, and thanks.